we definitely have a few people here. Who are joining for the first time. From the names I can see. Okay, well, just before we get started, just know that this is a continuation from where we stopped. If you were there in the meet and greet, you would probably already have all the information about how to go about with the previous session so that you can meet up where we are. But I mean, if you were not in the meeting, you probably want to go back and look at the recording. But we are continuing from where we stopped the last time, and if I remember correctly, the last session we had on Python was on Friday, and we talked about loops. We went into loops, and we ironed out some few real life use cases for loops, and we kind of actually built some Python programs in that session. So you definitely need to go back and watch those sessions so that you can meet up. But today we are dealing with dealing with functions in Python, and I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. Gonna be able to attend to you guys. So alrighty. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and we can get started. All right. Where is my VS Code? Not you, not you, not you, not you. Okay, there you are. All right. So today, like I said, we're gonna deal with functions. The last time we actually wrote these codes on Friday the last time. So maybe we'll be able to we'll come back to this code a little bit, to bring in functions into them. But I'm just gonna create a new file. Let me call it function. .py, and then we'll start from here. All right. So, well, so far so good. We have talked about a lot of some of the basic things in Python, and actually today is kind of like the last thing that we need to talk about in the basics of Python. So this is going to be our concluding session on the building blocks of Python. Not the concluding session on Python, but the very basics, So we've deal with things like variables, kind of we've learned how to read the Python code. We've learned how Python reads code sequentially and how it does conditional. And we also looked at loops, when Python needs to repeat things. Now we are looking at something called functions, and function falls into a part of Python called store and reuse. It's kind of a tradition in programming. Something called "do not repeat yourself" is a well-known phrase in programming. which most programming languages adhere to. So a lot of programming languages that you're going to come across, I think the only programming language that I've come across that I love repeating stuff is like HTML. But minus HTML, has a lot of repetition. Most programming languages, they follow that that idea of do not repeat yourself. And guys, we don't need to be on video because like it's definitely going to affect other people's network. So I mean, I'm already on video, I'm sharing screen, there's a lot of people joining, so like some people are actually struggling with network issues. So yeah, I mean, it's just to help the network. That's why we don't need to be on video. So like I said, we follow that idea of not repeating ourselves, and it's actually simple because what it means to not repeat yourself is there are several scenarios in programming. Like there are several scenarios in programming where you kind of have the same line of code in so many places in your code. Like maybe you have like imagine that you have like 4 lines of code, for instance, and you find yourself needing to use those 4 lines of code in different places in your program. So normally your first instinct is I'll just copy and paste it 4 times and everything works, and that's good. So but technically it's going to work. Like if you need to just copy and paste your code 4 times, it's going to work, right? But imagine that you have 50. Imagine they have 100, because typical software programs will have thousands of lines of code. Yeah, so if you have like if you have like 50 lines of code that you're repeating and you just copying and pasting them, maybe it's still gonna work, right? I mean, because if the code works, it works, right? But what if there are some mistake in those lines? Eventually along that you find out that, oh, okay, I made a mistake. I should have added a full stop here. I should have added a comma here. I should have, done this and done that. And then you just found a small mistake in those lines. Now, you need to go back and correct those mistakes in 50 places, So you have to go and, fix bugs in 50 different places. So that's kind of like, it gets messy, it becomes a waste of time, it becomes something that can actually like frustrate your life. So that's why the concept of do not repeat yourself is very, very popular in programming. And that's why they come up with the idea of, you could just write a block of code, keep it in one place, and then you can reuse it in multiple places instead of having to write that same block of code in multiple places. You just write it in one place and then you reuse it in different places. And that's where the idea of functions comes into play in programming. So functions, they are very, very important. Actually, so far so good. We've been using functions, even though we haven't mentioned it. But if you go back to some of the some of the code, like this was one of the pieces of code that we wrote on Friday. If you remember, we were trying to solve a specific issue whereby someone was working in Access Bank, and we needed to program an LED display that tells people welcome to Access Bank, once they come in, and it does this as long as the bank is open. So that was a specific scenario And if you look at this code, there are two functions that we have used in this code. The first one is range. Range is a built-in function in Python. And the second one is the print statement. Print is also a built-in function. So what does that mean? It means that we have like several functions that already comes with Python, because this idea of do not repeat yourself is so important that the programming language itself is built around it. So the people who created Python, they had to think ahead. What are the most possible use cases that people will need to do all the time? Something like print, right? Print, for instance, is a way for us to say, hey, Python, I'm giving you this stuff and I want you to just, display it on the console, right? So print itself is actually a function, but it's a built-in function that comes with Python. Range also, it's kind of a function that helps us to, let's say we want to, in this case, in this scenario now, we have like a line 3, we have something called total minutes, which is a variable, and then the variable is assigned the number 10. We're just telling Python, hey, I have a number 10, and it's the total minutes that the bank is going to be open. In this case, the bank is open for 10 minutes, and during that 10 minutes, we just want every minute, we're just printing welcome to Access Bank, and we're just displaying it, maybe somewhere in front of the door of the bank to tell people, hey, welcome to Access Bank, right? So we're going to be doing this every minute. Like every minute we will print this, every minute we'll print this. So range is something that we use a lot in Python. So when we have to do something like that, we can just use the range function, which if you give it a number, it will just turn it into a range. So if you give it 10, for instance, which is total minutes, right? You give it 10 to range, it will just turn it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 till 10. That is a range. So range becomes 1 to 10. If you give it range 100, it becomes 1 to 100. Actually, it starts from 0 anyway. It's 0 to 100. So that's what the range function does for us. We have so many other built-in functions in Python that we have used. If you look at some of the other code that we've written before, like we've used this print function so many places. And then we have used this input, right? So you notice that anywhere you see, a word like this and it has parentheses, that's a function. And anywhere you see, a word like this, it has parentheses, brackets, that's a function. And then it means that if you go inside of the Python source code, like the main Python source code that you downloaded and installed on your laptop, you notice if you actually go inside it, you see where this function is defined, so but nobody cares about that. We already know that it's defined in there and we already know how to use it. If you say print and you give it something, he knows how to go and do all of those things and then he prints it. So it follows from that idea of not repeating yourself. Otherwise, we will need to write a whole long programming code to be able to print something to the console. And it doesn't make any sense because we're always printing something to the console. So why not just turn it into a function so that we can always use it whenever we like, instead of just repeating ourselves every time. So that's the whole idea of the whole idea of functions. All right. So it gets messy. That's why we try our best to use Python, to use Python functions. So we have seen there are so many built-in Python functions that we have actually been using, and there are so much more. There are so much more. Anytime you are reading a Python program, you're going to see so many functions, so many built-in functions. Anytime you see something like this, anything that ends with a parenthesis, it's a function. It's a built-in function. The code is already written. It comes with Python follow com, so we don't need to write it again. But there is a second type of function, which is the ones that we can define by ourselves. So even though Python already, you already, created so many functions so that we can use them without, to save our time, without needing to repeat ourselves. We can actually go ahead and create our own functions sometimes, because so many times we find ourselves in scenarios whereby we need to, write a line of code so many times. Like if you find yourself writing the same line of code so many places in your application, then it's probably a good idea to put it in a function. And then we're going to learn how we create those functions and how we can use it and how they work, and the some specific use cases, and at the end we might even be able to add some functions to some of the code we already written in the past. And even if we don't do that, we can even create some of them as assignment scenarios for those of us who like practicing on their own, to have fun with it. So but today we'll learn how to create our own functions. So let's get started. Like a very simple, where is that file? Okay, I created this file. So we have at some point, we have a lot of people joining in. Please, just like we normally do, it's kind of our tradition right now to, if you see anybody on the lobby trying to join the meeting, just go ahead and accept them, please. Anybody can do this. If you're already inside the meeting, you can do this. All right. So because it's actually like a lot of distraction for me admitting people all the time. Thank you. You guys can, help me out with that. Okay. So you remember some time ago we looked at reserved words in Python, and I told you that these reserved words are very important Python words that we have already taught Python that Python knows all these words. It knows how to use them. They mean specific things for Python. We can write our variables in Python. You can name it whatever you like. Just don't use any of these words. So these words, they are reserved for Python. Python already knows how to use. Python already has a specific use for each of these words on the screen right now. All right. Like the false, await. We have actually so far so good used so many of these words, like the if statements, the else. We have used this if and else. We've used them. We've learned how to use them. We have used true and false. We have used the none, I think. And last class, we learned how to use this continue and break. And then some other classes we learned how to use this except and try. And all of these are just, different reserved words that are in Python. So today, we are looking at this one. This def, DEF, is short for, define or definition. It's just the code word for functions, for defining your function. So anywhere Python sees def, DEF, Python knows, oh, okay, we're about to define a block of code as a function that we can use so many times in our code, so that we don't repeat ourselves, so that we don't have to write that code so many places in our program, and we can just define it in a function. And then Python knows to just take note of these definitions and then just use them. anytime you need it. So that's one of the reserved words that we're actually going to be using today. There are so many of these reserved words that we haven't used. I think we've also used imports at some point, and some of them we might not actually get into them because they're not popularly used. They're not something that you need all the time. But as you continue to write your code in Python, you kind of, you continue to come across this reserved word, and you will be able to see how most of them are being used, right? But like I always say, there is no need to memorize them. As it just naturally, like as long as you continue to practice coding, naturally you just understand how all of these reserved word function, right? So today we are going to be using this def. For instance, like I said, anywhere Python sees def, it's short for define, definition, or whatever. We use it to define our functions. It means that, let's say for instance, we are trying to print some lyrics to the console. We can do something like define, we say print lyrics, right? You see that it always has this parenthesis behind it, right? And then because it's going to be an indentation block, it has to come with this colon. That's how it works with Python. So anything we put inside this code block, Python is going to know, oh, okay, you just want me to take note of this code, but you don't want me to run it yet until I now come back and tell Python, hey, you remember that function we defined? I want you to run it, right? So there are very simple things that we can do under this function definition like this, for instance. So this is just a very simple print statement, that just prints some simple lyrics to the console, and that's all it does. But just to show you what I was saying, if I go ahead and I run this code, that will be Python 3 function.py, and I go ahead and I run this code, you'll see that it does nothing. Even if I run it 100 times, it's not going to do anything, right? Normally, when you say print, and you did not put this definition, right? If you would just say print and we run our code, it's just going to print whatever we say to the console, right? That's how it works in Python. But once we put it inside a function, we define it inside a function, and then we run it, it does nothing. That's because we have just defined the function. And the second part of it, and that's what makes it work, is that we have the second part of it called invocation of the function, right? So invocation of the function means that for us to actually make Python to run this code, we need to now invoke it by now saying explicitly, we'll now call the function like this, right? And then when we do that, we'll now see that if we run the code, okay, now we're running into some issues. What is the issue? Saying print letters, blah, 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 name error, print lyrics is not defined. Do you mean print lyrics? Okay, what's the issue here? Oh, okay. I made some mistake in my typing, right? Sometimes you make mistakes and you get errors, and that's natural. It's just the perfect moment for you to learn that, okay, we can we can get errors, and then some of them, anytime we get errors, Python is going to complain. It's going to throw up some, throw up some ugly stuff that if you read it, sometimes it makes sense, and then you can kind of figure out where the issue is coming. At least Python is able to tell you at which line the error is coming, So, I'm able to just go to that line 5, and see that, oh, okay, I'm seeing print lyrics, and is it the same thing? But why is it not working? And then I looked at the spelling, and I saw that I did not spell this one correctly, right? So that happens. And then if I actually run this code right now, we now see that we're able to get, the print statements on the console, right? So far, so good. What have we done? We have simply defined a function, and we named the function print lyrics. And this is how you define a function. Sometimes we can put some things inside this parenthesis, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But the simplest way to define function is, like for instance, telling it to just print something, right? So now we just define the function, and then on line 5, we now invoked the function. So there are two parts of a function. You define it. When you define it, it doesn't do anything. Python just ignores it. Even if you wrote 1 million definitions of functions inside your code, Python is going to ignore all of them until you invoke it. If you remember, if you've been in the group, if you remember, like there was a point in time when somebody came into the group and was like, hey, I wrote this code, and I don't know what's happening. It's not running, and like I've been trying to run it, it didn't run. And then so many of us contributed, tried to help the guy. It turned out that he actually defined his functions, but he did not call it. So this is a common mistake for programmers, especially people who are just starting. The mistake is always kind of define your function and forget to call it, and then you're running your code and it's not working, and you're wondering, like, I wrote all this code, and when I even run it, it doesn't do anything. Like, what's happening, right? So this is one of those common mistakes that happen. Functions, there's always two parts of it, the place where you define it and the place where you actually invoke it. So we'll see some common examples, and we'll see how we can actually use this, use this to achieve stuff, right? So when we see the definition, once Python see that definition statement, it doesn't run the function right away. It just remembers that, oh, okay, there is a function, we've named it print lyrics. What it does that it just stores this code. It remembers it. It stores it somewhere in your laptop. It just makes a space in your maybe in your hard drive or your RAM, and it just keeps it somewhere there. It's like just putting those lines inside, just saving them, and until you now come back, and then when you need it, and that's when you can actually just call it. That's when Python goes back and gets the function and then run it. So is where you invoke it. That's actually when Python will run it, right? And that's the whole idea behind do not repeat yourself. This is how it works, basically. So you can define plenty functions. Like, there are so many use cases for this that it's so rampant in programming. Imagine, like, you're building a calculator, for instance, and in your calculator, maybe you are writing a program that will calculate people's pay, like we did in one of our previous classes. And in that program, you're going to do addition, you're going to do multiplication, you're going to do subtraction, but you're going to do it so many times in your code. You can just write a function that does multiplication and keep it. Write a function that does addition and keep it. Write a function that does this and keep it. And then anytime you want to do multiplication, you can use that function without needing to write the whole code all over again. Anytime you want to do addition, you can reuse that function without needing to rewrite the whole, the whole logic that does that does addition. So that's the whole idea about not repeating yourself and not, just writing your code once and then reusing it multiple times. So this is the writing it once, and this is reusing it. So what this means is that we can actually now reuse this function as many times as we like. So if we actually write it 4 times, we can run our code and we'll see so many printing, right? Typically, if we want to do this, we'll need to write this thing 4 times, right? So instead of writing all these things 4 times, we just invoke the same function 4 times. That's the whole idea. That's the whole idea behind functions, right? Cool. Let's work with some examples. I have some that are already prepared. Like this guy, for instance. Let me clear this. All right. So this is a very simple code, typical beginner stuff that we normally work with. Let's see what is happening here, right? We have our on our line 1, we have given Python a number 5, and then we're just telling Python, hey Python, how are you doing today? I have a number 5, but I want you to remember it for me. Anytime I need it, so you remember it. But this number 5, I want you to remember it with X, right? So 5 is the value. This is the assignment operator in Python that we use to assign a value to a variable, and then X is our variable. So we are just telling Python, we have this number. Remember it. Python is going to take this number from us. It's going to go somewhere in our laptop, find a storage location that can contain this number, and then it's just going to mark that place as X, and Python is going to store it there. It's just going to save it there. And then we came on to the second line and we tell Python print hello. Remember, print is actually a built-in function, but it's already, we don't need to define it like we are defining this function, because it's already defined inside the source code of Python. If you actually go inside the source code of Python, you see where they define the print function. It will be a whole long line of code that the ultimate goal of it is to print whatever you give it to the console, right? So on line 2, we are saying Python, print hello. All of these are not related. We are just trying to prove a point here. So just work with me, right? And then on our line 3, we now define our function. All right, we defined a function. We called it print lyrics, and because it's an indented block, with all this indentation here, it means that all these code blocks are together, right? So inside our function definition, we now give Python in a number of song lyrics to just print to the console, right? And then we come to line number 6. We now give Python another word to print to the console as well. We say print yo. And then on line 7, we did a simple mathematics, a simple addition, where we told Python, hey, Python, you remember that number that I gave you before, which is this guy here? And I told you to remember it with the word X. Python say, yeah, I remember that. We say, yes. Now I want you to add 2 to it. And that's what we are doing here. So Python goes, 5 plus 2. Okay, I can do that. 5 plus 2, what do you want me to do with it? We say, yes, we want you to update the same X now with the new value. So Python goes, okay, 5 plus 2 is 7. So Python saves 7 in the same location where it used to save 5, right? So now X is 7. And now on line 8, we told Python to now finally to print X. And that's all that is going on here. And let's actually go ahead and run this code. And when we run it, we'll see that Python prints hello, because this is our hello. The Python prints yo, and this is our yo. But Python completely ignores everything here, right? Just like we said, because when we define the function and we haven't invoked it yet, Python will not do anything with it. It just remembers it, knows, okay, you have defined a function, you want me to remember it. I got it. You know, Python remembers it. And then we came on line 7, we added 2 to the original value of x, which is 5, and it becomes 7. And then on line 8, we now told Python to print it, right? So that's how we got 7, right? Typically, you know, a normal developer would be like, what happened? But, you know, like, why is this guy not printing? Well, it's not printing because we have not invoked it yet. That's the only reason, actually, right? So that's just what I wanted to show you. It doesn't get printed until we invoke it. So we have to invoke it. That's the second aspect of building your function. First of all, you have to define it. Second of all, you have to invoke it to actually have it to run, right? So that's the whole point. So what do we need to do to make Python now use this block of code? What do we need to do? We actually need to invoke the function. So let's say we want to invoke the function after printing yo, then we can actually go ahead and call the function here. Once we call the function, it's going to run, right? If I clear my console right now and then I go ahead and run it, we'll notice that now our function is running, it's printing, right? It's working. Awesome. That's honestly the whole thing about function, and the rest of it is just, you know, like playing around with it and, you know, trying to understand several use cases for it, you know, and how we can maybe what other thing we can do with it, like, because functions are so important that, like, this cannot just be the only thing we do with it, right? So that brings me to the next thing, right? There is a way that we can actually add some flexibility into our functions, right? Because sometimes we want our function not just to always, print lyrics. Sometimes we want to make it dynamic so that it will not just be printing the same thing all the time. We can always use it to, you know, do different things all the time. That's where the dynamism or the flexibility comes in. And we achieve that with something called parameters, right? So we can add some parameters into our function to make our function more useful for us. These parameters, they are very important in Python. In fact, Python cannot do without it. There is a Python framework called Django. When you start using Django, when we get to that point, that framework is what allows us to build softwares with Python. You know, because at this level of learning Python, all you can do with it is maybe write scripts, like all these simple scripts that we've been writing. But if you actually want to be able to build a full software with Python, then you need to use maybe like a Python framework like Django. This whole, you know, functions and parameter thing is so important in that Django framework that, you know, by the time we get into that, you see how important they are. So, but it's actually a very simple thing, right? It's just as simple as adding something here. Like just adding something inside this parenthesis so that we can pass in some more information into the function definition. I will show you exactly how we do that. Let me use another example at this point. Let's look at something like this now, for instance, right? But Okay, I guess we can go through this before we take any questions. But we have already seen, these things, like this is just us trying to define a function, right? We've already seen how we can use if statements to tell Python these are the conditions, and then because of these conditions, you can check whether to continue to run the code, or whether to do this or whether to do that. So we use if statements when we want to tell Python only run this line of code if certain conditions are met. So in line 2, we're telling Python that if something matches with this, if the parameter we are passing to the function matches with this word here, return hola. Else, if it's fr, return bonjour. Else, just return hello, right? So this function behaves like a language translator. Imagine like you're trying to write a Python program that will attend to people from, they are coming from different languages, different background. Maybe some of them hear French, some hear English, right? And you want to tell Python, if we have someone who is hearing French, greet them in French. If we have someone who is hearing English, greet them in English. That's kind of what this function is doing, right? So it takes a parameter, and the parameter is called lang, short for language, right? So this is a very important, a very typical classic example use case, whereby we are trying to make our function dynamic so that we can pass different languages to it to determine what the function is going to return to us, what the function is going to give us, right? So there are only few new addition of things that we haven't already talked about here, and that is this parameter. And this parameter, that's the way that we make our function more dynamic. We make it more flexible so that we can always use it for multiple purposes instead of just printing out the same thing all the time. But there is another word that we introduce here, which is this return. If we go back to our reserved words, you see this return here. You see that this return is one of Python reserved words. It's one of those words that that we already reserved for Python. Python has a specific use for this word. So it's one of those reserved words. And now we're going to see how we actually use it in real stuff, right? So what the return return statement does is, that's what we use to bring back anything we want our function to give us back. So we use that return. It's actually, as the name implies, it's just return, right? So return is almost the same thing as print. So instead of saying return, we could actually say something like print. If you're already used to us using this print statement, right? So we can always do this and it will work, right? But there is a slight difference between print and return, right? But we'll cover that in due time. So I just wanted to, I could probably just cover that right now so that we don't waste so much time in this session. Now, the main difference between printing something and then returning something is we usually use return in functions. We don't usually use return when we are just writing our program normally. Like let's say this is not a function, Let's say this is not a function, and we're just trying to write something. Then we can use print all the time. But inside functions, right? Inside functions, we use return because once Python sees return, it doesn't continue to the next thing. So return doesn't just serve as a way for us to bring back, display a value or bring back a value. It also functions as a termination, so that whatever this function decides to give us, let's say, the user who is using this our language translation script is an English speaker or is a French speaker in this case. Once Python return bonjour, it doesn't go and continue to run the rest. So it just terminates the program at that point and continues with whatever else you have. That's the difference between this return and print, right? So that's why inside our functions we use return instead of printing. So, but you kind of get the idea. They are both basically doing the same thing, right? Just helping us to return the value. So, like I said, this function behaves just like a translator. It takes a parameter called lang, which is short for language, and based on the value that we give it, if we give it ES, then it's gonna know ES is short for English. It's gonna return the greeting in English, which is hello, right? Oh, hola, which is hola. And then if the parameter we gave it is French, FR, it will return the greeting in French, which is bonjour. So that's what the parameter is doing for us. So let's actually go ahead and call this function. Right? Let's go ahead and call this function. So if we run this right now, it doesn't do anything. And that's because we've defined the function, but we haven't called it. And then for us to call this function, we have to explicitly say greet. So normally, this is the only thing we need to call our function. But because we have now introduced a parameter, Python is expecting something here. And just to show you, if I go ahead and I run this function now, it will blow up. But if I remove this parameter, okay, it still blows up because now it no longer understand what this is, right? So we kind of need that parameter because if we already have it, we need it, right? So, but the point is, once we have a parameter, then we need to pass a parameter here when we are calling the the function. And this is where things starts to be a little, look a little bit tricky. At least for me, the first time that I learned about function, this was where my confusion came from, right? So it's kind of it's kind of really important to understand how the parameters work. Just for context, you need to understand, like, these things, they are not fixed. It's just humans trying to find a way to solve a problem, right? So the people who created Python, they were trying to find a way for us to make the functions more dynamic. So that's why they came up with the idea of passing parameters to it. But the tricky thing about the parameters is that, we don't actually need to put lang here, for instance. Instead, we can put anything. We can basically put anything inside this brackets, and then Python will take that thing and assign it to this guy. It will normally look like something like this. How we normally do. How we normally do. Like variable equals to. It's just like an assignment. So let's say I put ES here. I put ES here. What Python does is that it takes this ES, it assigns it to lang, and then whenever you see lang here, it becomes ES. It kind of like saying lang equals to ES. It's basically the same thing as doing this, right? So that is a little tricky, you know. So, but if you practice functions a little bit, you kind of get it. Sometimes we have more than one parameters, and you know it becomes a little more complicated. But just understand that the whole idea behind it is so that we can be able to ultimately pass in values into this our function, so we can make it more dynamic. So now that we are trying to invoke this function, we pass ES to it. What Python does is it goes back to this function as soon as we call it. It goes back to this function. It takes this our ES, it assigns it to lang. So lang becomes ES, right? So Python goes to the first thing inside our function. It checks if lang equals to ES, and of course lang is equals to ES. Remember, there is a difference between double equal to and single equal to. Single equal to is an assignment, while double equal to is just a way to compare. Is this thing and this thing the same thing? You know, like basically the original meaning of equals to. That is double equal to in Python. So we are just checking if lang, which is our parameter, is ES, and it is ES because we have assigned ES to it by passing it to our invocation, you know, at this place where we are invoking it, right? If it's ES, then return holler. And then if we go ahead, let me clear this. We go ahead and we run it. We got nothing. Okay. There's a little interesting, but let's see what's going on there. We have great. If lang is great is equals to ES. Maybe we need to, you know, just use the single quotation, I guess. Let me try single quotation and see if that works. Oh, okay. I see what's happening here. It's probably returning our holler, but because we haven't told it to print it, that's why it's not working. So let me just go ahead and use print here first of all, to avoid, you know, confusing anybody. So if I use print, let me see what happens. So it gives us holler actually, right? But when we use return, it's actually return this holler, but we need to explicitly tell Python to print the returned value before it can print it. So if we actually want to make sure that this is showing up in the console, we probably need to do something like this. Yeah. Let me see if that works. Not sure. Okay, so that works. So we just need to make sure that we are printing it if we want to see it on the console, right? Cool. Now, what if we pass FR to our invocation? Let's see what happens now. Now it prints bonjour, right? So now we've made our function dynamic, you know, and it's not just repeating the same thing all the time. It's not printing the same thing all the time. It can return a value depending on the parameter that we pass to it, right? So this is a very important concept, because with this ability in Python, the ability of Python to do this, we're able to achieve so many things in actual programming, you know, of softwares, you know, like there is so many things, there are so many use cases where this idea of passing in variables to the function to make it dynamic, so that, if we pass in a different variable, it returns something else. If we pass in a different variable, it returns something else. What if we just pass in a random something? Let's say we just say something like let's say fine. We pass fine. What happens now? Look, then it says hello. And why does it say hello? Because remember, this is where we are calling the function. So basically, Python starts to run the code from here. So Python sees that we say print, invoke this function, and we give it a parameter, and whatever it returns, then print it, right? So Python takes this parameter, it goes to the function. It sees the function where we defines it. It sees that we have defined a parameter in here. It takes this guy that we assign it, he assigns it to lang. So lang becomes fine. On the first line, Python checks, we told Python that if lang is ES, then return holla. That is, if language is English, tell the person holla, right? And then on the next one, we said else, if language is French, return bonjour, right? But language is not ES and language is not FR, which means all these ones are not going to work. They're going to be ignored because they didn't meet the criteria. So, but on line 6, we told Python else, that is, if none of this thing works, then just return hello. So it means that we can pass ES here, and then we'll get holla. And then we can pass FR here, and we get bonjour. But anything other than that, we return hello. So we can say hi, we'll get hello, right? Because it will trigger this else, and it will return hello. And then if we say, I don't know, whatever else we decide to type here, we'll always return hello. So that's how we can make our functions dynamic, and flexible, so that we can use it for different scenarios. We can make them behave differently by just passing in different parameters to it. And that gives us an idea of how functions work and how powerful they are, and how they actually put in some kind of smartness, some kind of intelligence into Python, so that Python can take different shapes and different forms based on the keyword, the parameter that we pass to it, right? And we're able to achieve so many things, using this stuff. So let's say, like, in real life, that we're actually writing a program, and let's say I have a few friends. Some of them are English, some of them are French. I just want to write a program that will tell them, hola, or bonjour or hello, and then write their name. I can write them out so many places, but if I define a function, then I can always use this function and then add the names of my friends to it. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say, for instance, I'm trying to greet a friend called for French. I mean, it could be anybody. So let's just say something like Sally. Let's say I have a friend called Sally, right? So I can put this because it's just a word. And let's say I have another friend called Great. Maybe this one is English. This one is let's say this guy is English, and Let's just say this guy is Ahmed. I actually have friends called Saleh and Ahmed, so I guess I can do this. If I go ahead and I run this code now, then we'll be able to achieve something like this. So Python goes ahead, it does everything we did before. It takes our code, it takes the thing we gave it, it runs it, it goes and check. Okay, if you say French, then say bonjour. So it returns bonjour, and then it comes back, it continues to run the code. And then we are also printing Sally. So at this point, Python starts to run the script from here. So it goes print, and then it sees this our function declaration. Then it goes back to the function. It does whatever the function is supposed to do. It comes back. It continues to run the rest of the code. So that's how we get bonjour and we get Sally. And then on the second line, same thing, it sees our print statement, it sees our greet. So on this our greet function, we are invoking it here and we are passing the parameter ES to it, right? So Python takes the parameter, it goes, it checks, okay, this is ES, it assigns ES to lang, it goes, okay, you told me that if language is ES, which is English, then return hola. It returns hola here, and then it continues to run the rest of the code, and then it prints, Ahmed as well. So that's how we got hello Ahmed. So you can see that in real, like in actual programming environment, let's say maybe you have an actual website, whereby once the user logs in, you want to maybe do something like check the user's location. If the user is located, say for instance in Niger, or Burkina, or all those French-speaking countries, around us, you can greet them in French and then concatenate the, include their name. Then you can actually achieve something like this. You will just need to put in the logic, using something like a function like this, so that inside your function, you'll be able to check if the person is in a certain location, or if the person is English or French, and then you'll be able to include the appropriate greeting in their name like that. And that way, your website is going to be able to, cater to people who are in English-speaking countries as well as people who are in French-speaking countries. So that could be a practical use case for this. But of course, this is a very simplified example because at this stage, we don't want to overcomplicate things. So, but you kind of get the idea of practical scenarios where this can be helpful, right? So that's why we are doing something like this, right? So we get our we get our, the function returns the value. We call it residual value, kind of whatever the function, after running the function, the residual value is what we are returning. And then you also notice that as soon as it returns hola, it doesn't go ahead to check anything that is remaining, because this return statement, it terminates the program, it terminates the function at this point, and then it goes back to where the code stopped and it continues to run it. This is actually a very interesting thing in Python, because first time I tried to work with Python, I didn't really understand how this worked, because like how it's able to know, how Python is able to know, okay, reading this code, it gets here, it goes and they start to run the code in a whole different line altogether. But even after it's done, it knows to come back and continue from where it stopped. So it's actually really interesting how it works. Yeah. But with this kind of function, we're able to to return the value. On the other hand, you will see that the functions like the print lyrics that we tried before doesn't return anything. We call those ones non-fruitful functions. These ones that return something, we call them fruitful function because it returns a value. There is a fruit, there is a residual value that the function gives you so that you can continue to use that value with the rest of your code, right? Now, there is another thing I mentioned, there are scenarios where you can use more than one parameter here. I'll give you an example. Let me use a simple example in this case. Let's do something like this. This is a very simple function definition that we are using to perform addition, right? Remember that addition will always require two values. You cannot add one thing. You have to always be more than one. So in that kind of scenario, you have to pass more than one value. Let's say you've defined a function that performs addition, right? You have to pass more than one value to it, so that anywhere you are performing addition, you can always pass two values, and your function will add those two values, return the value for you, and return the answer to you. That's a kind of like what this function is doing, right? So we can call this function called add, which is we can pass any two numbers to it, and it will just add those two numbers and return the answer to us, right? Now, A and B are our parameters. They're just like a placeholder that we can put anything, right? So I can always do 2, 4, like that, for instance. Of course, I need to be space. If I do this 2, 4, and then I run it, it doesn't do anything because I haven't asked this guy to print it, right? So for me to actually print it up, I need to use the print statement. Now, if I go ahead and I run it, we get 6. So what is happening here is that as soon as we invoke the function, Python knows to take the first number we gave it and assign it to A. Take the second number we gave it and assign it to B. This can go as many as, like, you can even do more. You can even do more, C, D, like that. As far as you are putting all of them here, A, B, C, D, then we can actually go ahead and keep on, giving Python more parameters here. And then when we run it, Python will still add everything and give us back. So this is a very interesting twist, because in actual programming scenarios, we always have that need to pass more than one parameter to our function in order to achieve different things. Otherwise, we need to define multiple functions. And remember, we're not trying to repeat ourselves. So this feature allows us to pass multiple parameters into a function is actually a time saver. Otherwise, we need to define multiple functions, So that's another thing I wanted to mention. We can pass on multiple parameters to our function in order to achieve something, right? So I mean, this is probably all about it, about functions. The things you need to know is that they are just reusable blocks of code that we can reuse multiple times. And if we want to do this so many places, we can be adding, we can change these values anywhere we like, you know. And we don't have to start writing all this addition logic again. As far as we call it, we just need to give it numbers, and it will always go and use this function, add all those numbers and return them for us, right? So that's the cool thing about functions, because we can always reuse them. So they are very, very reusable, and they allow us to not repeat ourselves too many times. We define them using the keyword def, right? So once you write def, then you need to give your function a name. In this case, we call this one add. Remember, we've done some other ones like the print lyrics. So you can basically call your function anything you like. Python doesn't care. The only thing Python care about is this def. This is the word. This is the word that is reserved for Python. So Python knows once it sees def, it means we are defining a function. Then we can call our function whatever we like. And then optionally, we can put parameters. If we don't want parameters, we don't need to put it. And then we can also put even multiple parameters, as many as we want. And we can always return the answer, the value that, after all said and done, return something. And then once we return it, we can always call our function multiple places to achieve our goals. When you define a function, it doesn't run until you invoke it, right? And you can invoke it multiple times. And that invoking it multiple times is what allows you to, reuse the function multiple times. So you can use the function to, add two numbers now. Later, use it to add a different two numbers. Later, use it to add a different two numbers. Think about it. You can even do multiplication. You can even do addition. You can even do more complex mathematics. So that's what makes it reusable and allows you to not repeat yourself too many times. When the function returns a value, it's fruitful. Otherwise, it's called non-fruitful. It doesn't return any value. And we use the return keyword in fruitful functions in order to return values. For functions that don't return anything, they are called non-fruitful. So we don't need to pass any variables to it. We don't need to return anything even, right? So functions are very important. We use them not just for the convenience of it, but it will actually help us to keep our code clean. And to be honest, it's usually the difference between an amateur programmer and someone who actually knows what they're doing. So someone who knows what they're doing will always prefer to define functions and now write smaller lines of code instead of repeating yourself all the time. Even though these two things can work, right? So, but this using function is more preferable because it allows you to achieve clean code, more organized, and it follows with the whole idea of DRY, do not repeat yourself, which is very, very important ethics that we follow in programming. Don't forget, we have also built-in functions. There are so many functions that are already created in Python that Python already use, and we don't need to define those functions. We only need to define functions when we are trying to create new functionalities, so that Python can do more for us. But most of the time, some of the things you are trying to do are probably already they probably already have some built-in function that handle it anyway, right? So, but as you continue to program, you continue to practice, you kind of become used to these things, and it makes more sense as you move on, right? There are some codes that we've used there's some code that we've done before, and I kind of wanted to see if we can use some of them. Like, yeah, like this guy now. If you were here in the last class, we wrote this code, and this code is something that allows us to, you know, kind of print "Welcome to Access Bank." You know, now this can be an assignment for you guys. So think about a scenario whereby, let's say you are the developer who is writing this code for, you know, you work in Access Bank, and you are trying to write a Python script, you know, that will, you know, trigger maybe some television or, you know, some LED display to display this word, "Welcome to Access Bank." That is basically what this code is doing. It does this for 10 minutes. So every minute it's just printing "Welcome to Access Bank." That's what this code is doing. Now think about a different scenario whereby we have Access Bank in different locations in Nigeria. We have some of them in the Southwest, which predominantly speaks Yoruba. We have branches in the Southeast, predominantly speaks Igbo. We even have Access Bank in the North, predominantly speaks, you know, Hausa. And you want to make your program more dynamic, more flexible, so that if the Access Bank branch is in the North, you want to print this in Hausa. If it's in the West, you want to print this in Yoruba. If it's in the, you know, East, you want to print it in Igbo, right? That's a very good use case where you can define a function that, you know, helps you to manage all that, and then determines which language is appropriate to use, so that if the program, you know, if it's in Igbo, you know, it will go ahead and print this thing in Igbo. If it's in Hausa, it's printed. Like, that's a good opportunity for you to, you know, kind of try to practice with it and try to do it. So, you know, if you're in this class, or if you're, you know, eventually, you know, rewatching the video or whatever, you know, after you've gone through some of the examples that we've used in the class, let's see if you can solve this other problem. Come up with a program that actually, you know, helps us to run this program, not just in English, not just printing this in English language, but prints it in different languages based on, you know, based on the area where the Access Bank branch is, right? That's an interesting assignment. Okay, that brings us to the end of this class, and I have some hands up. Anieka Abase, do you have a question? Hello, Anieka, are you there? Your hands
Can
are
you hear
raised.
me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, good evening.
Good
So I
evening.
have a problem. Whenever I try to run my code, it doesn't run like yours. I have to highlight it before it can run, and even after doing that, there are times it doesn't even run at all. I don't know if I can share my screen
Yeah,
so I
yeah,
can show
laptop.
you.
Yeah,
Yes,
share
I
your
am.
screen. Yeah, share your screen. Let me see. I'm
Okay.
gonna stop sharing.
Let me know when you can see my screen.
I see your screen.
Okay. Okay, so like the first function we did today, this first one.
Mhm.
So I tried to run it, and this is how it came out.
Interesting.
So I usually just highlight if I should click on everything, it won't, I would be seeing lots of either syntax error or indentation error, something like that. I don't know what it means. So I usually just highlight them one by one in order to run.
So first of all, I can see some problems. You are calling your online for.
Okay.
You are calling your print lyrics function inside the function itself. I mean, I don't know why you are doing that, but that's an avenue for some problems. So can you remove that line? Okay, and then we come down again. Everything else looks good. Else, if lang is this, return bonjour.
I've not
Else,
gotten to this part yet, so it's this one
oh,
I've been trying to do.
okay. So can you just delete these ones? I mean, you can always do Control Z to bring them back. Can you delete? Yeah, from line 6 to no. Do Control Z. Delete from line 6 to line 15. Oh, okay. It looks like you're already doing you're already calling a different function. All right, it's fine then. Just delete the rest. Actually, delete from line 6 downwards. All right, go ahead and invoke your function at that point. Print, just type print, PR.
This is what you want me to run, Abi?
Yeah, just no, yeah. First of all, type the print. Type the invoke your function on line 6. I'm talking about inside the where you are writing your code. Type print. All right. Yeah, print lyrics. The down one. You can just select it and it will complete. Or you can hit enter, it will complete as well.
Okay.
So if you go ahead and run it, it will work. But the reason why it will not work, you needed to copy it and paste it on your terminal before it works, because you are running Python in interactive mode.
Oh,
So
what does that mean?
go ahead and click on on that terminal.
Okay.
Hit Control C. I think it's Control C. Hit Control C on your laptop. Hit it again. Try Control D. Yeah. So now you try your arrow key. Press your arrow key up.
Should I enter
No. Okay.
on this
It
page?
looks like so it looks like you opened Python in interactive mode, and then so that's one way to run Python. But when you are already writing your Python script inside
Mm.
a file in your VS Code and you are saving the file, you can just run the program, run the file with Python. So in this case, I'm not sure if you are in the correct, okay, Python projects, you are in the correct folder. Can you do ls? Type ls on your terminal. Let's see the files that are there. Just ls.
LS.
So that shows you all the files that are there. And the particular file you are trying to run is function.py, right?
Yes, yes.
Cool. So you need to type Python and then space function.py. So this command is just saying Python run function.py. That's basically what this command is saying. So if you go ahead and you run it, then Python will run the file that you've already written your code inside. You get, so go ahead and hit enter. Now you see that nothing happens because, I mean, you have defined your function and you have invoked it, but you didn't really ask it to print. So you need to put that your invocation at line 6 where you says print lyrics. You also have to actually, put it inside a print statement. So select the whole line, select the entire line, and then hit your brackets. Type, just press your bracket on your keyboard, parentheses on your keyboard. It should
Okay.
cover the, yeah, it should cover this thing in parentheses. You should cover that line in parentheses.
Okay.
You need to
Sorry,
be
I'm confused.
okay. Just click on line 6, right?
Okay.
Click on 6 itself, where it says 6, to select the whole line.
Okay.
Can you see the bracket on your keyboard?
Yes, yes.
Press it. It should be control bracket or something
Shift,
like that.
shift. Is it
Yeah,
the open
shift.
or the close bracket? Which one?
The open, any
The
one of
open.
them should work, but I think the open.
Okay.
What happened there?
I don't
Okay.
know. Came out like
No, it
this.
worked. It worked. Just take your cursor to line 7. Just arrow key upwards. Arrow key upwards should do it. No, line 7. Arrow key downwards now. Now delete once. Just hit delete just once. Okay. Hit delete again. Just
Not
once.
nothing happened.
All right, just take your cursor to the end of line 6.
To the end of line 6. Okay. Okay. Should I
Press
click
it
on
down.
it?
It's not there. Yeah. Click it.
Okay.
So close the bracket. Put the closing bracket. Put a
Okay.
closing bracket there.
Okay. Okay, I've
So
done that.
now you have now covered this in bracket. Then you need to type the keyword print at the beginning of line 6.
Before the brackets, right?
Yes, before the bracket.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like that should work. So we have now covered the function that you defined. We have now covered it inside the bracket, and we should be able to run it. And it will not only invoke the function, but it will also print out the result on the console. So you can now go back to your terminal and run Python function.py again. If you use your arrow key upwards, it should bring the it should be able to bring
Yeah,
the history.
I've done that.
Yeah, so you can hit enter now. Let's see what happens. Did you hit enter?
Yes, yes.
Okay. It's not doing anything because I can see that in your VS Code, you have not saved the file function.py. If you look at the tab at the top where it's showing you white dots, telling you that, hey, you have not saved this file. So just hit Control S on that file.
On the file. Okay, I've done that.
Control S. It have not still saved. It's still showing you that white dot on it. Shows that it hasn't saved. No. That will not work. If you want to save it from there, you need to click on File, See the three dots at the top left.
Top
No,
left.
the other side, yeah.
Okay.
Still doesn't work. Look at the other one, the one at the top that is 3 lines.
This one.
No, top left, 3
Top
lines,
left.
not,
This one.
yeah. File, go to file, then save. Okay, now I'm sure you have saved the file. Let's go ahead
Yeah.
and run it again.
So function again, right?
Yeah, I think you can just use no, not function, just Python function.py. I think you can just use your arrow key upwards and then it will complete.
Okay.
Okay. Now
Should
let's
I
hit
enter?
enter. Mm-hmm.
Ah, finally. Thank you.
Okay. You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Yeah, I mean this is also a teachable moment for a lot of us in the chat. So like definitely nice that you are following along, typing the codes and everything. We have another hands up. Who is that? Aniet Khan Abbas. Okay, that's still you. All right. Does any other person have any questions before we go? Well, this brings us to the end of the class, and also to the end of the first part of Python programming, which is basically we have covered the basics of Python. If you go back and you watch all the videos up to this date, you would have already been able to write simple Python code and call yourself a Python programmer. Next, we are going to start looking into some more advanced stuff. We'll get into something called data structures in Python, and it's more of a, I guess, theoretical aspect of Python that we'll need to cover. But there are definitely ways that we can put in examples and go with it. But basically, data structures is next. And if you're feeling ambitious, you can read up ahead of time and kind of try to prepare, because it helps a lot if you have some ideas before the class. Otherwise, I will see you in those classes, and for now it's goodbye and enjoy the rest of your day. Okay, all righty, no problem, you're welcome.